You're watching Bet Safe. We're talking all things Formula One with myself and, as always, with Mr. Johnny Herbert. Now, we haven't spoken for a couple of Grand Prix, have we? Malaysia and also Japan. We're going to speak about Austin, Texas, but let's talk about all things Lewis. And for us, great British people, great British
Thumbs
Johnny
up.
and myself,
Both.
It's gone well, hasn't it?
Very, very well, yes. Hasn't sort of put a foot wrong. Has put himself in prime position now for the rest of the season, and he's very happy. He seems to be in a very good place, and he seems to be performing absolutely brilliant. You know, he was under a lot of pressure in the last couple of races. It was great to see Max Verstappen sort of get that win in Malaysia, but Lewis did what he needed to do. And then again in Japan, it was a similar situation where job done. So good on him, yeah.
Also, it has to be said before we talk about where maybe Ferrari and Vettel have gone wrong. Red Bull have done well, haven't they? I mean, you know, this back end of the season.
It's been nice, hasn't it?
Yeah.
No, really cool. I think the biggest thing seems to have been, I think there has been some movement towards getting the combustion engine side of it sort of much better, and I think that is where that performance I think has come from, to be honest. I didn't probably expect it in Malaysia because you got these two quite long straights, but that didn't seem to be a factor. You know, Max was able to pass Lewis going into turn one, which again is quite a long straight, so that shows that they've actually got some momentum down the straight itself, so straight line speed is good. And then in Japan again, yes, the performance was very, very good, and I think it's lovely now that we sort of have effectively 6 cars going possibly for that race win. They're still that tiny little bit behind when it comes down to the qualifying pace, the raw pace, but then when it goes down to the race pace, the car does look very, very, very good. It enables the drivers to sort of push themselves right on the very, very limit. It doesn't seem to damage the tyres, which is an important factor, always historically has been. And the drivers are very hungry for that success at the same time. So it's great to see both sort of Daniel and Max, you know, really on the top of their game.
And almost ironically, at the detriment of Sebastian Vettel, Red Bull are probably pushing themselves for the first time since Sebastian Vettel was racing for them.
Yeah, in many respects. Yeah. It's taken a while to get themselves sort of back in this position. You know, we had Max winning in Spain last year, but that was sort of a little bit more of a lucky break that sort of come his way. But that's what racing is all about. But they're a team that are very, very good at working together to get the right elements. They didn't start the season particularly strong, and I think Adrian Newey was sort of on other projects outside of Formula One, and I think he needed to come back into it. And when he did come back into it, and his team and the thought process started to change, the performances started to ramp up. But I have to say, Renault, I think, have done a very good job at the same time. So together, that's why I think we saw Max take the win, and those performances we're seeing in the races as well, being so strong. So it's great to see, because as I said before, it's great to see another team who's going to be involved with this championship, because we still don't really know. It's not a done deal, this championship, and Red Bull could be a very important part of what happens at the end of it.
And of course now Sebastian Vettel, a very learned man, he has letters after his name, DNF.
Yeah.
What's happened?
I have absolutely no clue. It was incredible what happened in the qualifying in Malaysia, and then what happened actually on the grid itself, where they had to take his car off of the grid, and then that was it. We didn't see him anymore. So that was a big chunk of points that we lost. And of course, then Japan came along. You sort of think, well, they're going to sort of change the spark plugs, let's say, and get it all sort of ready. And what fails? Another spark plug that took him out of the race as well. So again, a
cost
double
about 10 or something like that.
Something like that. I think they're a little bit more expensive than that, to be perfectly honest. But they're on the cheaper side if you put everything sort of into the box. I suppose it does. I don't know where they were shopping. They were shopping
Motorist
in
discount
in Italy, down in Maranello somewhere. Yeah. So yeah, real shame for Sebastian, to be honest. I think Sebastian has driven brilliantly, and for whatever reason, you know, it's not just on one car. Of course, it's on Kimi's at the same time, where they've both sort of suffered these problems. So it's just unbelievable that we've got so far down the season with all the good work that Ferrari have done at the beginning of the year or over the winter, let's say, to get themselves in this position, and then in a very short space of time, you know, they've lost so much ground, and Lewis has just been ticking over, taking it and going, thank you very much.
And yet at the start of the season, it was, I think it was about 5 races in, and we were sitting here talking about the pressure's all on Lewis Hamilton. You know, he either, you know, he wins this next race or he says goodbye to the championship.
Yep.
And he dug in, didn't it? You know, it does take a lot of strength, doesn't it? Mental strength.
Yeah, it does. You know, there's a lot of people who don't sort of like Lewis, and I don't always know exactly why. You know, I do his rawness. His rawness is what he does when he gets in the car, puts the visor down and gets on with the job. That's what he is absolutely brilliant at. Some people criticise him because of certain things, the lifestyle he leads. I don't think it's a problem, because it doesn't interfere with what he does on track, and it's not for us to say what he shouldn't do. He probably looks at me and says, well, he dresses like a right Wally, he does. So, and he's probably right. He's probably right there. Oh, I don't know, I think he would sometimes, yes, with my dress sense sometimes. But I think the whole package of Lewis Hamilton is just sort of getting still stronger and stronger. That's what's scary about it. You know, he's got a very good ability to sort of just get everything that he needs from the team, and then he's always able to apply it once he gets in the car. Yeah, has it been the perfect year for Lewis Hamilton? He's had those couple of weak ones in Monaco, Russia, for example, but I think that's just been a combination of where Mercedes are at. We always think the Ferrari is going to be sort of the better race car, the most consistent car over a season, which now is not the case. Reliability has really made a big dent in their season, but Mercedes are just always there, always churning over all the data that they have and then reassessing the issues that they've got against Ferrari, and then effectively coming out of it stronger. And that's what I think we've seen from the Mercedes side. But then it's the driver who's able to do the job consistently. You know, his teammate Valtteri Bottas is still struggling. You know, he's actually come out and said, which I find amazing, where he's not happy with the situation he's in. He's not driving very well, or he needs to drive better. But he's actually said that out in the open, which is quite a surprise, quite a rare thing to hear. But overall, you know, for this championship, it's not a done deal for sure. I think there are still things that can happen. We only have to go to Malaysia 1 year ago when Lewis was trying to do that fight back against Nico Rosberg, and the engine went bang and there were flames out the back of it, and he didn't finish the race. So that can still come into play. So it's far from over.
If we'd seen Lewis Hamilton in London Fashion Week, I don't think you'd be knocking yourself by any stretch of the imagination. But is it not that sort of...
I quite liked it.
That James Hunt sort of devil may care about Lewis, and that sensibility of Niki Lauda about Sebastian Vettel a little bit, is that not... Are we not sort of like harking back to the past a little bit with that sort of relationship? Because we've sat here before in the past, and you've said people don't get Sebastian Vettel, he's funny.
Yeah.
But people don't see it.
Don't see it.
You don't get a chance.
No.
But so do we not like that whole thing? Do we not actually root for Lewis Hamilton, really? If we didn't see him coming out of a nightclub with Stormzy and 5 models, would we not appreciate him as much as we do?
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things. I think the way that sort of everybody looks at people in this sort of modern world that we live in, you know, most of the negativity that I see is always sort of on the world of Twitter, for example.
Yeah.
Would they ever say that to Lewis's face? I very much doubt it. So it's something that, you know, we've all got opinions. We're all going to sort of put those opinions out there. You know, for me, if it's in front of a TV, or if these guys doing it, you know, via Twitter and the girls as well. So, you know, they're fans, and they're going to be critical probably, because they can be. Again, no one knows really who they are, so they can be critical. But I think Lewis just takes it as a pinch of salt. I think he might see it, he might hear about it. I think he just ignores it and gets on with the job. You know, we live in a very, very different world than what it was in the sort of James Hunt and Niki Lauda sort of era. Things have moved on massively. The way that information is sort of distributed around the world, it's instant.
Yeah.
And everybody can have their say. So the pressure's very, very different than what it was when it was back in, let's say, Nicky's and James's day, because there were no phones, there were no faxes back in those days. It was a telex.
Yeah.
That's the only way you could send a telex, if anybody knows what they are.
We used to telex each other, didn't we? Come on.
That's something that was, you know, everything was just so
Yeah.
much slow, and it was probably in the national press, obviously, the next day. So the pressure they had was within a team and within themselves, with what they were doing on the racetrack to get those race wins. Where now it's just completely different. Everything is sort of totally analysed and over-analysed in many, many ways. But I think what we get on the track still actually works. And to me, it's still enjoyable to watch, because you're still seeing these guys push their very, very limits. And what's been good this year actually has been the physical side as well. We actually saw, like Max Verstappen in Malaysia, and a little bit we saw a couple of drivers in Japan. They're actually starting to rest their heads on the side of the monocoque, so the necks are really, really being tested. So the physical side is definitely gone up a level, which I think is a good thing.
Well, let's have a look then at the drivers. Let's have a look at the human ability and the construction ability. Lewis now 306 points, Sebastian Vettel 247, Valtteri Bottas 234. Who'd have thought at the start of the season that he would get as close to Sebastian Vettel? And the constructors, Mercedes 540, Ferrari 395. Now that tells us all we need to know about the cars, doesn't it, and the drivers.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think again that's down to what's happened in the last couple of races. Valtteri has got closer just because Sebastian hasn't got any points at all. So it's a little bit sort of, I don't know, sort of a bit fake, I suppose, with the points that we're seeing. But again, that's, as I said earlier on, that's what racing is all about. Sometimes you have the luck going for you if you're a driver, and sometimes you have the luck going for you even if you're a manufacturer as well. You know, producing the spark plugs that go into the engine.
Sure.
They're not normal spark plugs, by the way. They're not the normal twist ones that go in there and they go sparky, boom, and there's your combustion. They actually aid the way that the fuel goes into the combustion.
So you can't go to
well.
the lawnmower?
No, you can't. No, you can't. No, they're quite a technical piece of kit. But you know, that's where we are in the world. So everybody's tested from the guys that are in the car on the track to the guys that are doing all the chassis work. But of course, the engine is something that has to be absolutely perfect at all times, and when you're pushing those limits, that's when these mistakes start to crop up, and maybe that's what's happened with Ferrari.
So we're heading across to the US of A, the land of Trump.
Yeah. Fake news.
No, this is genuine. This is
genuine news. Yes.
What chance? And how big would it be for Mercedes? It would almost look like be having two fingers on the podium, wouldn't it? If they could get their, you know, if they could get Lewis and Valtteri there,
sure,
and particularly if they got 1 and 2 in the championship, that'd be huge, wouldn't it, over Ferrari?
I think it would be, and I think it would be very important for Valtteri as well, to be honest, because he's in a little bit of a sort of a low place at the moment. He needs something that just sort of gives that spark to get himself sort of back in the right mental capacity that he needs when he gets in the race car. You know, this sport is very, very tough, as most sports are, but you've got to have a run of consistency that sort of gives you that feeling of actually it's moving in the right direction. And you know, we had Nico Rosberg actually in Japan on our team, you know, the current world champion.
Yeah. And
he was talking about sort of how things you have a rhythm, and once you get the rhythm, then that's where your mindset gets stronger and stronger, and then your performances get better and better. Then you sort of go back actually to Jolyon Palmer, for example, who did his last race, sadly, in Japan. He hasn't had that rhythm because he's had so many issues with the car. He's made a few mistakes, but the majority of the time it's always been down to the car failing. And again, that's part of this rhythm that you've got that Valtteri has been sort of suffering with, maybe more on his side as raw performance. But he's not as bad as it's sort of coming across at the moment, and I think he will do a bounce back, and I think Austin is one of those types of tracks that hopefully will be good for him, and he'll have a good weekend and a nice result at the end of it.
It's going to be hot,
Yep.
but there's talk of rain as well. What sort of track is it? Because I mean, it's relatively new, isn't it? I mean, I think Lewis has won most of the races on it anyway.
Yeah, it's pretty strong there, I have to say. Pretty strong there. Great track, very, very undulating. You've got the first turn, it's like going up a sort of Mount Everest when you first get to the turn 1. It's really, really, really steep. A hairpin right at the very top. Then it sweeps down again. A lot of swinging fast S's. It's a real test for man and machine, this track. The tyres as well are going to be sort of really pushed, a lot of load in that is going through them as well. So that's always an element that sort of comes into play. The driver's got to help the tyre sort of keep that performance all the way through a race. But of course, qualifying, different story. You're just pushing as hard as you can.
Yeah.
But for Ferrari, I think they have a car that is very good with those flowy type of corners as well. But you've got that very, very long sort of back straight. That sort of would favour the Mercedes for sure. But it's a real test, and it's a test that Lewis has really been able to conquer it. Like you said, you know, he's had so many wins there now, and I think he'd be going there very confident. I think that he's going to do it once again. So I think he's going to be the man that's going to be on top form at exactly the right time at a track that is very, very testing to the drivers.
What do they make of it over there? I mean, the Americans, they
Love it.
We like racing, go round and round.
Yeah, they do it that
We don't
way.
like no corners.
Yes,
and
it's that way.
yeah, is it that way? Sorry.
Yeah, it's a different form of racing what they're used to. You know, they've got so many diverse motorsports, from the NASCAR to the IndyCar to the sort of off-road buggy things that they do, to the motorbikes, jumping and everything else. They've got Bigfoot and doing all that sort of running over vehicles as well. So it's diverse. The racetrack has been very, very popular. Downtown Austin is really good. You know, it's a music city, a lot of history with that side of it, and it is very popular with the F1 fraternity, and a lot of people come in. There's a big university in Austin itself, so you've still got the young Americans that are coming in, and they do turn up. They try very hard at the circuit to get some real, you know, big bands to turn up as well. So they have a little sort of concert as well, just to sort of add a little extra to the whole weekend. So they do typically in America sort of really try to make a whole show of the whole weekend. So it's diverse from, as I said, from the music to what happens around the track with all the different sort of amusements that they've got, to actually what then eventually is the main event, which is the race come Sunday. And it's been tough for them in many regards, I think, but I think what has been good for them as well, Mexican driver, as in like Sergio Perez, has been able to get a lot of Mexicans to come up and watch the race as well. I hope it's something that will continue, because it's a great venue, and as I said, tough track.
Well, let's have a look. BetSafe have got a special offer this weekend. You'll like this, Johnny.
Okay.
Where will Lewis Hamilton win the championship? That's, you know, given that he does, which we think he will. In America, it's 7-2. Mexico, it's evens, and Brazil 5-2.
Okay, yeah. I think the way we're sort of going at the moment, I cannot see this Ferrari debacle continuing. I think we've seen the worst of it.
Kicking and
I think they're going to come out kicking and screaming, to be honest. So I think it's going to just push it a little bit further. I think it's going to be Mexico or Brazil. I think I'd be very surprised if it goes any further than that. So, but as I said, we just do not know. There are so many other issues that can crop up and can cause issues for Mercedes and Lewis, and then the championship sort of back even Stevens, and it will go right down to the wire. So, yeah, but I still think Mexico will probably be, no, Brazil. Sorry, Brazil will be the one.
So if we're looking at pole this weekend, Austin, Texas, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
With you, Mr. Johnny Herbert, what are you saying?
Yeah, well, Lewis for pole. I think it's just a track that he just seems to totally thrive on. Second, I'm going to go for Seb, and I'm probably going to throw something different in the mix. I think the Red Bull, one of the Red Bulls will be third. Which one of the two, I'm not 100% sure, but I'd probably go for a man who wants to sort of do a little bit of a bounce back after his teammate having that race win in Malaysia. I think maybe Daniel Ricciardo for third.
Oh, now this is interesting then. You'll like this. The race odds. Lewis Hamilton for Austin is evens. Not surprising.
Nope.
Sebastian Vettel 9-4. Valtteri Bottas 6-1, which is good.
Yeah.
But I like this. Verstappen 14-1. Ricciardo 16-1. Now there, for a gambling man like yourself, what do you think? I mean, Ricciardo 16-1.
I think it's something that you wouldn't go anywhere near it in a qualifying situation at all. And as I said before, when you're talking about the races, the racing itself, that is where that car comes alive, and that's where those two guys have shown to have this unbelievable raw ability to get the best out of the car when it comes down to the race pace. So 14-1 Max and 16-1 Daniel Ricciardo. Wowzer. I think that would be worth a little tickle.
There you go. Remember where you heard it. We're off to get some homemade cookies and some of Mama's home-cooked pie.
Indeed.
As we always do when we're in the south. But you can check out all the latest odds at betsafe.com. And remember, you've got to be in it to win it.